Chapter 9. Hawkwing padded over to the foot of the rock pile to join the rest of his clanmates. Leafstar's voice as she called the meeting still rang in his ears, and he marveled at the strength and authority she was showing. "We've just told her that her mate is dead, and that he's been buried far from camp, somewhere she might never find, yet here she is, gathering her warriors around her." Hawkwing realized that Leafstar must be grieving for Billy Storm every bit as much as he grieved for Duskpaw, but she was forcing herself to be strong for the rest of her clan. News of the failure of the quest and of Billy Storm's death must have traveled, for sadness filled the air like fog as the warriors gathered, and no cat could look up at the rock pile to meet Leafstar's gaze. Instead, they crouched at the foot of the boulders, their eyes fixed on their paws, or exchanged glances of bewilderment and fear. Firefern, Stormheart, and Harrybrook, the kits of Leafstar and Billy Storm, huddled together as if they were trying to find comfort in each other.
"Disaster has fallen upon SkyClan," the clan leader began. "But we must not allow it to crush us. We must still find the spark that remains. If we give up our quest now, we dishonor the memory of the cats who have died for that quest. There is still a prophecy that we must fulfill. And now we know only too well that there is still darkness to be dispelled."
"But how are we going to do that?" Nettlesplash asked.
"Yes,"
Mintfur, Nettlesplash's mate, agreed, ruffling up her gray tabby fur.
"The quest failed, so maybe that's a sign that we mistook the meaning of the prophecy. Maybe we shouldn't be looking for Firestar's kin after all." "No!"
Cherrytail sprang to her paws, glaring at Mintfur.
"Echo Song has never been that wrong before."
So far, Hawkwing had sat in silence, keeping his thoughts to himself, but now he couldn't stop himself from speaking.
"Let's not forget that we weren't only following Echo Song's advice," he meowed. "She may well have been right, but it was some other cat who told us where to go, to find Firestar's kin."
As he spoke, every cat turned to look in the same direction. Following their gaze, Hawkwing spotted Darktail settled comfortably in the shadow of a rock, his paws tucked under him. "So he is still living here," he thought, suppressing a gasp. "Hawkwing!" Sharpclaw spoke commandingly from his place on the rock pile at Leafstar's side. "If you want to make an accusation, consider carefully before you speak. Darktail has been living among us since you left, and he was a huge help when the beasts attacked us. He fought valiantly." Hawkwing rose to his paws and faced his father. In spite of Sharpclaw's words, something encouraging in his voice suggested that the clan deputy might agree with him, or at least that he wanted Darktail's involvement brought out into the open.
"I have considered carefully," Hawkwing responded. "In fact, I've thought of very little else since Billy Storm died. Darktail's directions were all wrong, and they got Billy Storm killed."
Fury rising inside him, Hawkwing marched over to Darktail, other cats scrambling to get out of his way. He halted in front of the White Tom, thrusting out his neck until they were nose to nose.
"Did you know about the badgers?" he hissed. "I'd hate to think you led us deliberately into danger, but it sure looks like you did. Why would you do that to cats you don't even know?"
Behind him, Hawkwing could hear low murmuring from his clanmates. One or two of them let out angry yowls, echoing his questions. Darktail was not at all daunted by Hawkwing's attack or the hostility of the other SkyClan cats. Rising to his paws, he dipped his head respectfully to Leafstar. There was an expression of deep sorrow on his face.
"Leafstar, you can't imagine how bad I feel about this," he meowed. "I really thought I had it right, and I can't believe what happened."
Sharpclaw let out a snort.
"You really can't tell fresh scent from stale?"
he demanded, green eyes flashing with anger.
"What were you thinking? You could have gotten all the patrol killed."
"I know. It was all a mistake."
Darktail's expression was deeply distressed.
"It's been a while since I passed through there, and I must have been confused. I was only trying to help."
As he spoke, Hawkwing could sense that the hostility of some of his clanmates was turning to sympathy in the face of Darktail's obvious regret.
"Hawkwing, don't be too hard on him," Sandynose meowed. "If he made an honest mistake, then we have to put Billy Storm's death down to fate." "Sandynose is right," Mistfeather agreed. Darktail fought so bravely when the strange creatures attacked our camp. Why would he do that if he wanted to hurt us?"
Hawkwing couldn't believe what he was hearing.
Fate?
He sputtered, his shoulder fur bristling.
You think this is fate? How could it be fate for badgers to kill Billy Storm? How could it be fate for Duskpaw to die in a fire?
While he was speaking, Leafstar stepped forward and looked down at him from the rock pile. Her expression was stern but not angry, as if she understood the feelings that were flooding through him.
"Hawkwing, I can tell that you're still grieving for your brother, and it's hard to think clearly through the fog of sorrow. I know that as well as any cat."
His leader's words did nothing to calm Hawkwing. Instead, even greater outrage flamed through him, fierce as the fire that had killed his brother.
"That is not what this is about,"
he snarled.
"We shouldn't just assume that it's fate when something bad happens. This time, the bad thing happened when Darktail sent our patrol right into the path of a nest of badgers."
Darktail pressed himself against Hawkwing's flank.
"I truly believed the badgers had moved on,"
he mewed, sounding genuinely remorseful.
"I didn't know the beasts could be that sneaky."
As more of his clanmates murmured their sympathy and agreement, Hawkwing stepped away from Darktail with an angry glare.
"We met a kitty pet who told us that the badgers had lived there for seasons," he challenged the White Tom. "If a kitty pet knows that, why didn't you? And she told us that there were no clan cats anywhere near there."
Darktail's eyes widened, his expression innocent and bewildered.
"I only told you what I thought was true," he responded. "I don't know this kitty pet, and I can't explain her words." "You can't trust a kitty pet to know what she's meowing about," Bouncefire put in. "Why bother when your food bowl will be filled anyway?"
Hawkwing glared at Bouncefire, his lips drawn back in the beginnings of a snarl.
"Even if it was an accident, it was still your stupid fault," he hissed at Darktail.
"I wish I'd never brought Darktail to camp," he added silently to himself. "If I'd left him where I found him, Billy Storm would still be alive." Darktail's head drooped, and he cringed as if Hawkwing's words had hurt him.
"I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I believe Darktail," Bouncefire announced, returning Hawkwing's glare.
He raised his voice so all the warriors could hear him.
"What cat would be so evil as to lead strange cats into a badger den? We only just met him. It doesn't make sense that he would hold a grudge against us."
Leafstar dipped her head to Bouncefire.
"I agree. I have lost more than any cat, and I too believe it was an accident."
Raising her head to gaze at the sky, she continued.
"What in StarClan is happening? Why is all this misfortune falling on us now? Not just the badgers, but those strange scented fox-like creatures too. What did you say they were called, Darktail?"
"Raccoons," Darktail replied. Turning to Hawkwing, he added, "I told this to Leafstar and the others after the attack. Two Legs sometimes keep them as pets, but some of them escaped, and now they live in the wild."
"How do you know that?"
Hawkwing asked suspiciously. "I picked up their scent on the way here, and I asked some kitty pets about them," Darktail explained.
"Whatever they are called," Leafstar went on, "let's hope we have driven them off for good. We have other problems to deal with. Darktail, I believe you meant no harm, but the sad fact is that we're no nearer to finding the spark that remains. Maybe StarClan will send us a clearer prophecy soon."
Hawkwing's belly churned with anger.
"Why aren't we driving this rogue away? We never trust outsiders this easily."
He supposed it must be because Darktail had fought bravely during the raccoon attack,
but I still don't trust him. "I understand what you're saying, Leafstar," Sharpclaw meowed when the clan leader had finished speaking. "Darktail may have had dark motives, or he may not. But it's still a huge risk for the clan to put our faith in cats we don't know."
Hawkwing was relieved that his father seemed to share his suspicions of Darktail, but a moment later his relief faded away as Leafstar refused to change her opinion.
"I won't turn Darktail out without proof that he meant to harm SkyClan," she insisted. Besides, he is the only cat among us who might know where the spark that remains might be. StarClan wants us to follow the prophecy, and they don't send us messages that aren't important."
Hawkwing flexed his claws in and out. He knew that he should keep his jaws shut, that it wasn't his place to argue with his clan leader, but he couldn't stop the words from spilling out. "Leafstar, this is a bad idea. This cat is not one of SkyClan," he added, staring straight at Darktail. "He doesn't understand what it means to be a clan cat." "Come on, that's a bit harsh," Sandy Nose protested.
"Yes,"
Bouncefire added.
"not every good cat is born to a clan. Even Firestar used to be a kitty pet for StarClan's sake."
Hawkwing's fury was rising. He didn't want to listen to any cat. Are they all too stupid to realize that this rogue could destroy us all?
"I say we drive him out now,"
he snarled. A chorus of protest rose from the cats clustering around him and Darktail. But before Leafstar could silence the clamor, there was a stir of movement at the back of the crowd, and Frecklewish thrust a path through her clanmates to the foot of the rock pile.
"Leafstar?"
she began breathlessly. Leafstar was instantly alert, her ears pricking forward as she looked down at the young medicine cat. "Has something happened to Echo Song?" she asked anxiously. Frecklewish shook her head.
"She's still alive, she's fine, but she just had a vision."
"Another one?"
Leafstar's voice was sharp.
"What was it?"
"She saw a fire burning out, then blazing up again,"
Frecklewish explained, managing to catch her breath.
"But her voice was strained as she told me about it. She insists that SkyClan must find the spark that remains before it's lost forever."
The angry argument had died away while Frecklewish was speaking, and all the cats looked expectantly toward their leader. Hawkwing was the first to speak.
"Now we know that our destiny is still out there," he meowed. "We should never have listened to Darktail. What does he know about StarClan?"
Leafstar was unimpressed.
"Let go of your anger, Hawkwing," she told him. "This is the time to focus on our next move."
"Should we try to find Barley now?"
Bellapaw asked.
"He might be able to tell us where the clan cats are. At least we know he's trustworthy."
She finished with an awkward glance at Darktail. "That's a good suggestion," Hawkwing thought at the mention of Barley, the farm cat who had come with Ravenpaw to bring Bellapaw and her brother Rileypaw to SkyClan. He would never lead us wrong. The White Tom dipped his head toward Bellapaw, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "I understand why you might be doubtful," he meowed in response. "Even though I was wrong about the directions, I still believe I know where the clan cats are, and I can save you a lot of time if you trust me again. I just need to think of a better way to get there."
"Suppose we send out another questing patrol?"
Firefern suggested, her eyes brightening as she gazed at her mother up on the rock pile.
"They could look for the spark that remains and bring Darktail along to guide them."
"No, I'm against that," Sharpclaw snorted with a flick of his tail.
"What if the vision isn't telling us to go anywhere to find sparks to dispel darkness, but rather warning us to be alert? What if a danger is coming to SkyClan? If you ask me, we should strengthen our borders as much as we can before it's too late."
Hawkwing's anger rose again as he listened to his father's cautious advice. Before he could stop himself, he let out a derisive growl. Sharpclaw's head swiveled to face him.
"Show some respect," he hissed. "I do respect you," Hawkwing protested, "but I disagree with you over this. We have to go out and find our destiny."
Sharpclaw rolled his eyes.
"You make me wonder if we made you a warrior too soon," he snapped. "You're showing all the maturity of a kit."
If Sharpclaw hadn't been standing on the rock pile, Hawkwing might have leaped at him, claws extended. But his anger had to burst out somehow, even though he knew he should control himself in front of his leader and his clan.
"I'm not a kit," he yowled. "I survived a quest Billystorm couldn't. That's enough."
Leafstar stepped forward, her amber eyes blazing with fury.
"You might be a warrior now,"
she told Hawkwing, every word forced out through her teeth.
"But you should still know your place. You're no good to the clan if all you do is disrupt our important meetings and make them all about you."
Hawkwing took a step back, daunted by Leafstar's anger. She was normally so calm and controlled. I wish I hadn't mentioned Billystorm. That was a cruel thing to say to Leafstar.
"I'm sorry,"
he began.
"Sorry catches no prey,"
Leafstar snapped.
I'm trying to work out how to keep my clan strong and healthy, and you're getting in the way. You're being disruptive, and I won't put up with that."
Instinctively, Hawkwing glanced at Sharpclaw, expecting that his father would back him up, or at least defend him. But Sharpclaw was looking just as stern as their clan leader. "You need to hold on to your temper," he told Hawkwing. "It's too short. The kind that can get cats into trouble."
"I know just the thing to calm you down,"
Leafstar mewed, her eyes glittering.
"You can go and tend to Echo Song in the medicine cat den. Keep her clear of ticks and sort through her herbs to throw out any that are shriveled or rotting."
Hawkwing let out a moan, staring at his paws. "That's a job for an apprentice."
"Well,"
Leafstar asked icily.
"why are you still here?"
"What?" Hawkwing asked, briefly confused. "Don't I even get to stay for the rest of the meeting?"
"The meeting is over as far as you're concerned."
Leafstar swept her tail in the direction of the medicine cat den.
"Leave," she ordered. "Your punishment starts right now."
Feeling every cat's gaze upon him, Hawkwing stumbled off after Frecklewish. Every hair on his pelt was burning with shame. How did that go so wrong? Chapter 10. Hawkwing stood in the medicine cat's den, sorting through Echo Song's herb stores. It was the morning after the clan meeting, and already his punishment seemed to have stretched out for moons. Sticky juices from the rotting herbs clung to his paws. "They stink," he thought resentfully, "and they'll taste vile when I try to wash my paws. I'll never get clean." The shriveled herbs were no better. They crumbled under Hawkwing's paws, littering the floor of the den with dust and scraps. "And I know which cat will get the privilege of cleaning that up."
"What's wrong, Hawkwing?"
Echo Song, still resting in her nest, raised her head and gazed at him with compassionate green eyes. Hawkwing huffed out a breath. "I told Echo Song why I'm being punished," he thought. "So why does she need to ask?" "I know I shouldn't have challenged Leafstar at the meeting," he admitted. "But I'm annoyed that I'm being punished while that traitor Darktail is still stalking around camp as if he owns the place. It wasn't my interpretation of your vision that sent us on a fool's quest and got Billystorm killed. It was that rogue Darktail. He should be the one doing the gross duties." He gave a lash of his tail. "In fact, he shouldn't even be in camp at all. He doesn't belong with this clan. He's not one of us." As he spoke, Echo Song was looking thoughtful.
"True. I was not expecting Fate's Claw to be so treacherous this time," she responded. "But any cat can make a mistake, and I have to believe that StarClan brought Darktail to us for a reason."
"What reason?" Hawkwing challenged her.
"I don't know,"
she conceded with a nod of her head.
"But just because we can't work out what it is yet doesn't mean the reason isn't there. We have to search for it, that's all."
Hawkwing's anger eased a little at the medicine cat's wise words, but a moment later he had to suppress a growl of annoyance as Darktail strode into the medicine cat's den. "What do you want?" Hawkwing demanded. "Have you come to rub it in that our clan leader took your side?" Darktail dipped his head low. "I really didn't mean for any cat to suffer," he mewed. "Not Billystorm, and not you. I understand that you're angry, but I promise you, once you've calmed down, you'll see that I meant no harm. You need the pain in your heart to pass. That's all." "What do you know about pain?" Hawkwing snarled. "You didn't lose a brother," he thought. "You don't understand what Billystorm meant to this clan." Darktail heaved a long sigh and sat down beside Hawkwing, wrapping his tail around his paws. "You have no idea," he murmured. Hawkwing paused, curious. At first Hawkwing thought he would say no more, but after a long silence he started to speak again. "I had a friend. He was not kin to me, but we were brought up together as kids. We did everything together, for many, many moons. Then, one long, hard leaf bear, when prey was scarce,
He got weaker and weaker.
Darktail's voice quivered. He broke off again, then choked out.
Then he died.
I'm sorry. Hawkwing mewed, feeling a pang of guilt that he had been so dismissive of Darktail's feelings. I still don't trust him, but that must have been terrible.
If we had lived in a clan, my friend might still be alive, Darktail continued. You all take care of each other. That's why I'm so grateful to Sky Clan for taking me in, and especially grateful to you.
He dipped his head respectfully to Hawkwing.
Because you spoke up for me when some of the others weren't too keen on bringing in a rogue. I promise I'll repay the faith you showed me then.
Curiosity stirred inside Hawkwing, so that his anger toward the white rogue began to ebb a little. How do you plan to do that? He asked.
I volunteered to lead a new quest, Darktail replied, to show that I'm serious about helping SkyClan to find the spark that remains.
That's your plan to fix things?
Hawkwing's anger surged up again, and he put all the derision he could into the words.
You nearly got us killed on the last quest. Why should we trust you?
Because this time I'm putting my pelt in danger,
Darktail replied, an edge to his voice.
If I'm leading the quest, I'll share in any hazards we face. Besides, I've made contact with a friend of mine, a cat named Rain. He'll come on the quest with us and give us more guidance.
Hawkwing wasn't sure about that. Another rogue? Another cat we've never heard of and shouldn't trust? But before he could voice a protest, he remembered how he had tried to get Darktail driven out at the clan meeting. And look where that got me. He shrugged. Fine, so go then. Darktail seemed unoffended by Hawkwing's curt response.
I know that I owe you a debt, he meowed. You were kind enough to bring me into the clan, and then I put you in danger, even though that was the last thing I wanted. But I'm going to make it up to you.
Yeah, right. Hawkwing flicked his ears. How?
I'm going to go to Leaf Star and insist that you're allowed to come along on this next quest. I've talked to Rain, he went on rapidly, before Hawkwing could respond. And I think I've figured out where my directions went wrong. So now I know where we need to go. And I want you there, Hawkwing, because I think you deserve to be part of the group that finds the spark that remains and dispels the darkness. You should be part of the group that saves SkyClan.
A mixture of emotions rushed over Hawkwing, like a river in spate that threatened to carry him off his paws. He was annoyed that Darktail had been named leader of a quest. He's only been here for a couple of heartbeats. But along with that anger came doubt. Why would Darktail offer to lead us himself if he meant to do us harm? Even stronger than both these feelings was pride that Darktail would honor him in this way and vouch for him to his clan leader, especially after all Hawkwing had said to him at the meeting. Unsure how to respond, Hawkwing looked toward Echo Song for guidance, but the medicine cat was curled up in her nest, letting out gentle snores with her tail over her nose. Well, I don't think you'll be able to persuade Leaf Star, Hawkwing told Darktail as the deflating thought came to him. I'm sure she is still upset with me. I've been too quick to lose my temper lately. That's what put me in here, he added, gesturing toward the pile of herbs with his tail. When I'm angry, I get hot-headed and make rash decisions. That wouldn't be good on a quest. Darktail huffed out a breath, half contemptuous, half amused.
I don't agree. The cat with a temper, the cat who's the quickest to swipe a claw, is often the cat most likely to survive. Being a bit hot-headed, a bit impulsive, makes you a great asset to your clan. You should never forget that, Hawkwing.
As the White Tom spoke, Hawkwing found his feelings, still bruised from his father's scolding the day before, gradually soothed. Maybe Darktail has a point, and maybe, if I'm allowed to go on this quest, I can prove that I am an asset to my clan, hot temper and all. Sun High had almost arrived by the time Hawkwing had finished his tasks in the medicine cat's den. Leaving Echo Song still sleeping, he padded out into the camp and headed toward the fresh kill pile. He noticed that the hunting patrols had returned, and most of his clanmates were clustered around the prey. It's not a massive pile, but it looks as if we'll all get fed. Hawkwing had joined the others and chosen a blackbird for himself before he spotted a stranger in the camp, a handsome gray tom who was standing beside Darktail.
"This is Rain," Darktail meowed, dipping his head with the deepest respect to Leafstar and Sharpclaw, who stood in front of him, eyeing the newcomer warily. "He's been living close by, but he hasn't tried to cross your borders until now."
"Just as well," Sharpclaw growled, sliding out his claws and inspecting Rain through narrowed green eyes.
"He would never do that,"
Darktail assured the clan leader and her deputy.
"And I would never even think of bringing a new rogue to stay in SkyClan's camp. It's not my place to do that, not without permission."
So why is he here?
Leafstar asked, her even tone giving nothing away of how she felt.
"Rain thinks he knows where the clan cats are living," Darktail explained, "and he's willing to come on the quest to help find them."
I'm happy to do what I can,
Rain added with a polite nod.
Then thank you, Rain,
Leafstar mewed, warmth creeping into her voice.
You're welcome to our camp.
Hawkwing paused in gulping down his blackbird, wondering whether Darktail had really meant what he had said earlier in the medicine cat's den. His belly started to churn with anxiety.
"There's one more thing, Leafstar," Darktail continued. "I wondered if you would allow Hawkwing to come on this next quest with us."
Hawkwing? Leafstar sounded doubtful. He's still being punished for the way he behaved at the meeting.
"I know," Darktail twitched his whiskers, "but he's a good, strong cat and very brave. There are so many dangers out there, beyond the borders of your territory, that I think it would be a good idea to have a cat with us who doesn't hesitate to fight."
He has a point, Leafstar leaned across to murmur into Sharpclaw's ear.
"It will be for the good of the clan to let him come," Darktail went on, obviously encouraged by Leafstar's comment. "What better way for him to make up for losing his temper at the meeting than to help his clan find the spark that remains and dispel the darkness?"
Leafstar glanced around until she spotted Hawkwing, who tried to look as if he hadn't been listening the whole time. By now, he was so excited that his belly was churning even harder, and he was afraid that he might throw up the prey he had just eaten. Leafstar gazed thoughtfully at Hawkwing for so long that he had to clamp his jaws firmly together to stop himself from telling her to hurry up and decide.
Very well,
she mewed at last.
I guess Hawkwing can go.
"Really?"
Hawkwing's father, Sharpclaw, turned an incredulous look on his clan leader.
"You're going to reward that hot-headed young mousebrain for arguing with you in front of the whole clan? Is it really the best idea to send a cat who can't control himself?"
Despite himself, Hawkwing felt a hot blaze of anger and had to clamp his jaws shut to bite back a sharp protest. He had to turn away to hide from every cat how furious he was. I don't want to react to being called hot-headed by acting even more hot-headed, but it isn't fair. Why does Sharpclaw have to ruin everything?
I've made my decision, Sharpclaw,
Leafstar meowed firmly. Hawkwing glanced up, too nervous to hope. I know she won't let me go, not after Sharpclaw's rant. Leafstar looked down at him, her even gaze revealing nothing.
Hawkwing will go on this quest.
Hawkwing's anger ebbed away like rain sinking into parched earth.
I can go on the quest, and help find the spark that remains."
He thought again of the other clans, how exciting it would be to meet other cats who lived like SkyClan. It was all he could do not to break into a happy, self-satisfied purr. The sun had set, and shadows stretched across the gorge. As Hawkwing headed toward his den, thinking longingly of his comfortable nest, he spotted Sharpclaw padding determinedly toward him. What does he want? Hawkwing wondered nervously. He halted to wait for his father. Don't start complaining or arguing, he burst out before Sharpclaw had the chance to say a word. He knew it wasn't advisable to speak to his father this way, but he just couldn't stomach another lecture. Not while he was still glowing from their leader's announcement.
Leafstar has decided, and I'm going, whether you're happy about it or not."
"I'm not happy about it," Sharpclaw admitted, his eyes narrowing. "But maybe not for the reason you think. One day, Hawkwing, when you have kits of your own, you'll know what it feels like to almost lose them."
"What does that mean? Don't you think I can look after myself?" Hawkwing retorted, a growl in his voice. "You're talking like a queen in the nursery, but I'm not a kit anymore. I'm a warrior."
Sharpclaw nodded, unexpectedly serious. "I know that. But I can still be worried about you, Hawkwing. I've been talking to Cherrytail about this," he mewed. "Do you think you might have become too reckless since Duskpaw died?" Hawkwing was already on edge, and the mention of his brother made his self-control snap.
"Just when I finally feel like I don't have to feel guilty every moment. I don't want to hear about Duskpaw anymore," he spat.
Sharpclaw's green eyes widened in a mixture of shock and dismay. He stared at Hawkwing in silence for several heartbeats before he spoke again. "How can you want to forget your own brother?" he asked incredulously.
"That's not what I meant,"
Hawkwing began, horrified that Sharpclaw believed he could ever feel that way, but his father had already spun around and begun to walk away. Watching his father's retreating back, Hawkwing felt claws of guilt grip around his heart.
"Of course I'm not trying to forget Duskpaw. I didn't mean it like that. Did I?"
He searched his heart and realized no, he didn't. He never wanted to forget Duskpaw, his silliest littermate, who had always been able to make him smile. All he had wanted was to push away the painful memories and not always think about how much he was missing his brother. But Sharpclaw hadn't given him a chance to explain. Hawkwing hung his head, despair clouding out the happy glow he'd felt at Leafstar's decision. "Whatever the rest of the clan sees in me, Sharpclaw doesn't. Will my father ever understand?" Clouds covered the sky and a thin drizzle was falling, soaking through Hawkwing's fur and making him shiver. The dawn light was strengthening, but there was no sign of the sun. Sagenose, Firefern, and Harrybrook had been chosen to go on the new quest with Hawkwing, Darktail, and Rain. All of them were crouching around the freshkill pile, bolting down prey before setting out on their search. Hawkwing swallowed the last bite of mouse and stretched out his forelegs to loosen up for the long journey. Beside him, Darktail was doing the same. "How long do you think we'll be away?" Hawkwing asked him. The White Tom paused before replying, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "As long as it takes," he replied at last, "until we find the spark and dispel the darkness." His words awoke a glow of determination in Hawkwing's heart. "Yes, this time we won't stop until we find Firestar's kin." Rising to his paws, Darktail gathered his patrol around him with a sweep of his tail. At the same moment, Leafstar appeared through the drizzle, with Echo Song limping at her side and a group of the SkyClan cats straggling behind. "We're ready to go," Darktail announced, sharing a solemn look with the clan leader. "I promise you, I'll succeed this time." Leafstar dipped her head, while Echo Song padded around and gave traveling herbs to each of the questing cats. Hawkwing licked them up, grimacing at the bitter taste on his tongue.
"May StarClan light your path,"
Leafstar meowed, "and bring you home safe." Calling their goodbyes, the patrol followed Darktail as he headed for the trail that led to the top of the cliff. As he brought up the rear, Hawkwing noticed the apprentice, Pebblepaw, staring at him, a worried look in her eyes. "Is she anxious about me or the whole group?" Hawkwing asked himself. He had barely spoken to Pebblepaw since their return from the first quest, not out of hostility, that was all in the past, but because he knew she was grieving for Billy Storm, and that he was maybe the last cat she would want to comfort her. Now he realized that Pebblepaw could just be thinking about the good of the clan, but he couldn't stifle the feeling that she was especially fearful for him. "But I'm not sure she cares anything about me," he told himself. "I can't even begin to imagine it." All Hawkwing could do was tear his gaze away and bound over to the foot of the cliff, scrambling to catch up with his clanmates. He had no idea anymore of how he felt about the young she-cat. With Darktail in the lead, the patrol headed across a wide stretch of grass, bounded by lines of bushes on all four sides. Several fox lengths away, a group of huge black and white animals were standing, tearing at the grass and grinding it slowly between teeth like jutting stones. Hawkwing cast sidelong glances at them, trying hard not to look nervous in front of the two rogues. "What are those?" Harrybrook asked, the fur on his shoulders beginning to bristle.
I didn't think animals could be that big.
"They're called cows," Rain informed him with a wave of his bushy gray tail. "They're not dangerous, but it's best to stay away from them. They never look where they're going." 2 days had passed since the questing cats had left the SkyClan camp. After the first rainy morning, the weather had cleared, and now a stiff breeze was blowing, sending fluffy white clouds scudding across the sky. Hawkwing was enjoying the warmth of sunlight on his pelt and the enticing scent of prey from the bushes up ahead. "I hope Darktail lets us stop the hunt soon." Beyond the line of bushes, Hawkwing could see a copse of taller trees, and beyond that, the walls of a two-legged den, looming up, vast even at that distance. Darktail seemed to be heading straight for it. "We're not going there, are we?" Hawkwing asked. "We don't want to get mixed up with two-legs." "That's exactly where we're going," Darktail replied. "It's a two-leg barn, sure, but the two-legs abandoned it long ago." "Like the badgers abandoned the dens in that clearing?" Hawkwing thought, instantly wary. But he kept his suspicions to himself, only resolving to be very careful as he and the rest of the patrol approached the den.
"Why are we going there?"
Firefern asked, putting on speed to pad beside Darktail and Hawkwing. "Because I think it might be one of the places where Firestar and his kin took refuge," Darktail replied. "They might even still be there, but if they have moved on, we might be able to find traces of them."
"Cool,"
Firefern meowed. Hawkwing's pads prickled with excitement. He hadn't realized that they could be so near to meeting with the other clans. What will they think of us? What will we say to them? Darktail led the way through the bushes, the thorny branches scraping the cat's sides as they wriggled through the gaps. The copse lay a few tail lengths ahead, in a tangle of ferns and bramble. The air was still full of prey scent, but Hawkwing wasn't thinking about hunting anymore, when they might be so close to the end of their quest. Then, as they drew nearer to the trees, Hawkwing caught a flicker of movement in the branches. Instantly he froze. "Darktail!" he called out in a hoarse voice. "Up ahead!" Then he broke off as Darktail bounded forward, obviously relaxed, and called out, "Toad? Toad, is that you?" At the sound of Darktail's voice, a skinny, mottled brown Tom jumped down from one of the trees and trotted forward to meet Darktail. "Hi," he mewed, stretching out his neck so that the two cats could touch noses. Darktail mewed a happy greeting, his whiskers twitching with excitement. "It looks like they're old friends," Hawkwing murmured to Firefern. "Yes, we are," Darktail responded, glancing over his shoulder as the rest of the patrol caught up with him. "I'm sorry, friends. Let me introduce you. This is Toad. We've known each other for ages. Toad and Rain and I have often hunted together in the past. Isn't that right, Rain?" Rain nodded. "Right. Hi, Toad. It's good to see you again." Toad nodded. "So, what are you doing in these parts?" he asked. His glance raked over the SkyClan cats. "And who are these?" "More friends of ours," Darktail replied, settling down comfortably in the shelter of a clump of ferns and wrapping his tail around his paws. Rain sat beside him and beckoned with his tail for the other questing cats to join them. "We're looking for even more cats," Darktail continued to Toad. "A big group of them. Have you seen any unfamiliar cats around here?" "Funny you should say that." Toad raised one hind paw to give his ear a vigorous scratch. "I did see a whole crowd of them. Strong cats, well-fed, with glossy fur. It was weird. I've never seen so many traveling together in a group." Excitement blazed through Hawkwing, like fire licking through dry bracken. The spark that remains. His earlier apprehension at the sudden appearance of another rogue was swallowed up and forgotten. "They sound like clan cats," he exclaimed. "Could they have been Firestar's kin?" Toad twitched his whiskers dismissively.
"I've never heard of any cat called Firestar," he replied, "but I kept my distance. I just know that they camped for a while here in this barn, and they weren't rogues."
Hawkwing's paws itched to sprint straight to the barn.
"We were right all along. Come on,"
he urged Darktail, springing to his paws and kneading the ground in his eagerness to get going.
"Let's hurry."
"Hang on a moment." Sage Nose flicked out his tail to stop Hawkwing from bounding toward the barn. Irritated, Hawkwing opened his jaws to protest, then saw the doubt in his clanmate's eyes. He sat down again, saying nothing. "As I understand it," Sage Nose went on, "the other clans have an awful lot of cats between them. Would they all fit in that barn?"
"Good question," Harry Brook put in. "And how long have they lived there? According to Ravenpaw, they left the forest many, many moons ago."
"Well, it's a big barn," Toad responded, "and it would take many moons for that many cats to find a suitable place to live."
"Of course, we don't have all the answers now," Darktail replied with an unconcerned flick of his ears. "Perhaps some clans have splintered off, perhaps their numbers have dwindled, but surely we should check out the barn at least." The Sky Clan cats glanced at each other, Hawkwing struggling to conceal his impatience. "Do you know if the clan cats are still there?" Sage Nose asked Toad. The skinny rogue shrugged.
"They may be," he replied. "I noticed them when they first moved in, but I haven't been back there in a while."
"Why don't we just go and look?" Hawkwing demanded. "What do we have to lose?"
Sage Nose gave a grunt of agreement. "Okay, but let's all stay alert. We need to be ready if there's any trouble."
"It'll be fine," Darktail mewed easily. "Toad, come along with us. Perhaps we can introduce you."
Toad padded alongside as Darktail led the questing cats toward the barn. As he drew closer, Hawkwing couldn't work out what he thought of the place. His fur began to bristle as he spotted a monster crouching beside a wall of reddish rock, only to lie flat again as he realized it must be dead. Its insides were blackened and shriveled, as if fire had roared through it. Hawkwing shivered. "Even for a monster, that's a cruel way to die." There were no sounds coming from the barn, which made Hawkwing think Darktail must be right, and that the two legs who built it had abandoned it long ago. But when he opened his jaws to taste the air and pick up the traces of the clan cats, strong two-leg scents flowed in. Would Firestar's kin really hide out here, so close to Two Legs? Hawkwing glanced at his clanmates, who were all creeping around the barn, sniffing eagerly for the cat scent they hoped to find. Warily he padded over to join them, but the scent of Two Legs was swamping everything else, and there was another scent cutting through it. Alarm jolted through Hawkwing as he identified it. "Dogs!" he yowled. At the same moment, the doors of the barn burst open. Two huge dogs sprang out, then skidded to a halt. Their jaws were parted, and their tongues lolled as they let out bone-chilling howls. Two vicious-looking Two-Legs were holding them back by long tendrils fastened around their necks. For a heartbeat, Hawkwing and the other cats froze with terror. One of the Two-Legs growled something, and to Hawkwing's horror, both Two-Legs let go of their tendrils. The dogs were free. "Run!" Darktail screeched. Hawkwing spun around and raced away, his clanmates pelting alongside him, with Darktail and the other rogues just ahead. "Follow me! Make for the trees!" Darktail yowled. "Dogs can't climb!" Hawkwing's paws barely touched the ground as he hurled himself toward the cops. He could hear the dogs barking behind him and imagined he could feel their hot breath on his hindquarters. His heart pounded at the thought of their vicious teeth meeting on his tail. Toad was the first cat to reach the nearest tree. At once, he swarmed up the trunk and balanced on a low branch. Darktail clambered up beside him. Hawkwing leaped up into another tree next to them. Digging his claws into the fork where he crouched, he looked around and gasped with relief as he saw Firefern, Harrybrook, and Sagenose safe among the branches of a third tree on the other side of Darktail. Last of all, the dogs only a mouse length behind him, Rain made an enormous leap and dug his foreclaws into a branch of Darktail's tree. Hoisting himself up, he crouched there, hissing defiance at the dogs below. Hawkwing gazed down at the ferocious creatures, his chest heaving as he fought for breath. The dogs were running in wild circles at the base of the trees, barking fiercely as they looked up, their jaws slavering. Their two legs stood at a distance, pointing their forepaws and letting out huffs of laughter. How are we going to get out of this? Hawkwing wondered, trying to stop himself from trembling with fear. His gaze was still fixed on the dogs when he heard a sudden shriek and whipped his head around to see Toad falling from his branch in a frantic tangle of paws and tail. His claws scraped on another branch as he plummeted past it, but he couldn't get a grip. He hit the ground right between the two dogs. Toad was obviously half-stunned by the impact. He struggled to his paws and tried to run, but he was far too slow. Before he had staggered more than a couple of steps, the nearest dog was upon him, grabbing his hind leg in its jaws. Toad let out a terrified screech. "Help me!" Hawkwing couldn't see what he or any of the others could do. "If we jump down and fight, the dogs will kill us. They're fiercer even than the badgers." Howls of anguish came from the other SkyClan cats. Hawkwing opened his jaws and let out his own terror and despair. "This is too horrible. It's happening right in front of us, but there's nothing we can do." He couldn't go on looking any longer, as Toad's shrieks were abruptly cut off. "Listen, all of you," Darktail hissed. "This is our chance. While the dogs are distracted, we can escape." "But what about Toad?" Hawkwing asked, even though he knew how useless the question was. The rogue's gaze turned dark. "There's nothing we can do for Toad now." Chapter 11. Turning, Darktail began to scramble from branch to branch, heading toward the far side of the copse. Hawkwing followed him, thankful that his clan had trained him to hunt in trees, so he could be sure-pawed so far above the ground. With every paw step, he struggled not to listen to the dreadful snarling and tearing that came from the dogs. His clanmates clambered after him, and Rain brought up the rear. When they reached the edge of the trees, Darktail leaped down. "Run!" he yowled. The rest of the patrol pelted after him, their belly fur brushing the grass and their tails streaming out behind them. Darktail led them to the hedge, where they thrust their way through again, ignoring the thorns that tore at their fur, until they could halt, panting on the other side. Hawkwing's belly was cramping so hard he thought he would have to vomit. He wanted to shut out the memory of Toad being ripped apart by the dogs, but he thought the sound and the reek of blood would stay with him for the rest of his life. Crouching down, he peered through a gap in the hedge, ready to warn his clanmates if the dogs pursued them. But he saw nothing. All he heard was some distant barking and the yowls of Two Legs, which quickly faded away. "Now what do we do?" Sage Nose asked, when all the cats had managed to catch their breath. Darktail sat with his head bowed. The light had gone out of his eyes, and he looked smaller, hunched in on himself. "I'm sorry," he mewed. "It looks like there aren't any cats here. At least not anymore." "I can't believe that," Hawkwing protested. "Toad said he saw them. We can't have traveled so far from camp only to fail again. We must try to pick up their scent." Darktail made no reply. He wouldn't look at any cat, and his fur bristled as if he was still in shock. He's too overcome with grief to think clearly, Hawkwing thought, but Sage Nose gave Hawkwing a brisk nod. "You're right," he told Hawkwing. "We'll search, but we have to stay well away from that barn. Harrybrook, you keep watch, and warn us if you see any sign of those dogs or the Two Legs coming back." Encouraged by the older warrior, Hawkwing led his friends in a wide circle around the barn, noses to the ground as they desperately searched for some trace of the clan cats. If Toad was right, Firestar's kin must be close, he thought. We can't give up now. But eventually even Hawkwing had to admit that they had failed. The sun was much lower in the sky, and they still hadn't picked up even the faintest trace of cat scent. Apart from themselves, there were no cats here, and no evidence that cats had ever been there. No scraps of fur, no scratched-up ground where they might have buried their dirt, no feathers or other remains of prey. Finally, tail drooping dispiritedly, Hawkwing led the way back to where Darktail still crouched in the shelter of the hedge with Rain beside him. He looked up as the SkyClan cats approached. "No luck?" he asked. Hawkwing shook his head. "Nothing. I can't understand it. Maybe the two legs and their dogs chased the missing clan cats away, Rain suggested. They might even have killed them. All of them? Hawkwing couldn't believe that, even though he had just seen those dogs kill a cat. Even if they did, surely we would have found traces, blood or fur or something.
And you led us into this mess,
Firefern hissed, her ginger fur bristling as she patted up to Darktail and thrust her muzzle close to his.
Is this a game to you? Watching cats get hurt?
Darktail looked up at her, his eyes wide and tragic. His ears were flattened to his head, and his whiskers quivered. Hawkwing couldn't remember ever seeing a cat so distressed. Except maybe me, after Duskpaw died.
Okay, I messed up,
Darktail confessed, flattening himself onto his belly.
I promised to lead you to the clan cats, and I failed. I failed horribly. Again. And I'll never, ever forgive myself for the death of Toad. He was my friend. There's nothing I can do to make up for my stupidity. I deserve to be fed to the dogs, not poor Toad.
Firefern backed off, looking ashamed of her outburst.
Sorry,
she muttered.
You just lost your friend. I know you must be feeling bad.
I'll go and search the barn.
Darktail staggered to his paws.
I don't care if the dogs are still there. I'll find out if the clan cats stayed there or die trying.
You'll do no such thing, Sagenose growled, while Rain pressed Darktail down again with a paw on his shoulder. It's not worth another life. Sympathy for Darktail flooded over Hawkwing, swamping his frustration and sense of failure. The rogue looked not just grief-stricken but confused, as if he'd just woken up from a dark, terrifying dream that was actually real. He clearly couldn't believe what had happened. Hawkwing settled down beside the rogue cat, so close that their pelts brushed. Don't be too hard on yourself, he meowed. Toad just fell off the branch. There was nothing you could have done. Darktail nodded.
Yes, I tried to grab him, but he was too heavy for me to hold.
My brother Duskpaw died in a fire, Hawkwing went on, pressing his muzzle briefly into Darktail's shoulder. And I keep telling myself I should have saved him. So I know what it's like to feel responsible for a cat's death. It's like a vicious claw underneath your fur, snagging and tearing at you. I don't want you to go through that too. Darktail gave Hawkwing a brief glance before going back to studying his own paws. Thanks, he whispered. Hawkwing drew away slightly, leaving Darktail with Rain, and gestured with his tail for his clanmates to gather around. We have to decide what to do now, he meowed. Sagenose shrugged. What can we do? We've no proof that the clan cats were ever here.
Even if they were,
Firefern agreed with a frustrated twitch of her tail.
There's nothing to tell us where they've gone now.
You mean we should just turn around and go home? Harrybrook asked, blinking unhappily. Hawkwing opened his jaws to protest. But What else do you suggest? Sagenose interrupted. Should we just wander around, trying to pick up scent that might never have been there in the first place? That's a good way to get ourselves killed. Firefern and Harrybrook both let out approving murmurs as Sagenose spoke. Hawkwing could tell there was no arguing with them, and deep down he had to admit they were right. There's no way we can find Firestar's kin now. Okay, he mewed, reluctant to believe this was his second failed quest. I was so sure we would succeed this time, and now we're no closer to finding the spark that remains. I guess we go home. As he was speaking, Darktail rose to his paws and patted over with Rain at his shoulder. Hawkwing could see that he was beginning to recover, though he still looked shaken. We should move away from here, he meowed. Those dogs could still be around. Hawkwing cast an uneasy glance back at the barn. There was no sign of the dogs or Two Legs. He was almost certain they had gone away, but he couldn't rid himself of the fear that they could come bursting out at a heartbeat's notice and hunt him and his clanmates down. Their paws trailing despondently, their tails dragging on the ground, the patrol followed Sagenose, who took the lead back across the stretch of grass toward a holly thicket at the far side. "I think we should make camp for the night," he suggested, "and then head back to the gorge at sunrise." Within the thicket was a small clearing sheltered by ferns, where water seeped from a crack in a rocky outcrop and trickled into a small pool. Darktail let himself flop down at the water's edge with a drawn-out groan. Hawkwing could see that, though he had roused himself to follow the others away from danger, he was still devastated by the death of Toad. "Why don't you rest?" he urged, "and some of us will hunt." "I'll go," Sage-Nose offered immediately. "Harry Brook, will you come with me?" "Sure," the young Grey Tom replied. "I'll come too," mewed Rain. The hunters moved off into the bushes, leaving Hawkwing and Firefern beside Darktail. While Firefern coaxed the rogue to lap some of the water, Hawkwing drew into himself, unable to think any more of what he could say to Darktail. He was too busy imagining all too clearly what it would be like when they returned to the SkyClan camp. "Sharpclaw doesn't think I can do anything right, and now I'll have to explain to him that we've failed again." By the time the hunting party returned, the sun was going down, filling the thicket with shadows. A chilly breeze had sprung up, rustling the fern fronds and piercing Hawkwing's fur with cold claws. Rain strode into the clearing, dangling 2 mice by their tails, while Sage-Nose followed with a thrush, and Firefern dragged a rabbit between her forelegs. "At least the hunting was good," Sage-Nose mewed, dropping his prey beside the pool. "Come and eat." Hawkwing forced himself to move forward and take his share of the prey, but he felt every mouthful was going to choke him. Darktail hardly touched a morsel, and none of the others had much appetite either, except for Rain, who devoured his mouse and swiped his tongue around his jaws with satisfaction. As full darkness gathered, Hawkwing curled up and closed his eyes, but it took a long time for sleep to come, and when it did, his dreams were full of Toad's desperate shrieks as the dogs tore him apart. Hawkwing opened his eyes and stretched his jaws into a wide yawn. Pale dawn light was filtering through the branches of the holly thicket. Blinking, Hawkwing sat up and saw that the rest of the patrol were rousing too. For a moment he found it hard to remember where they were and what they should be doing. When his memory flowed back, he felt as if a huge rock had dropped into his belly. "This is the day we have to head back and admit we failed again." A few scraps of prey were left from the night before. No cat felt like hunting for more, so when they had shared the meager remains, they set out again, with Darktail in the lead. The rogue Tom seemed to be looking inward, scarcely speaking. Hawkwing guessed that he was still reliving Toad's terrible death. The sun was just coming up, shedding a golden light across their path. Every blade of grass glittered with dew, but Hawkwing's thoughts were still dark as he thought of their return to their waiting clan. How am I going to explain all this to Leafstar and my father? After a while, Darktail dropped back a few paw steps to pad alongside Hawkwing. "You look worried," he meowed. "Are you okay?" Hawkwing was touched that Darktail should think about his feelings in the midst of his own grieving. "Yes, I am worried," he confessed. "I'm nervous about going home and telling every cat that we're no nearer to finding Firestar's kin. I really hoped I would impress Sharpclaw on this quest, but now he's going to despise me as much as ever." Darktail gave him a sympathetic glance. "Sharpclaw doesn't sound like much of a father," he observed, "if he blames you for something that isn't your fault." Hawkwing felt a tinge of defensiveness at the White Tom's words. After all, Darktail doesn't really know Sharpclaw. "He's a great cat," he responded. "But, well, things haven't been the same between us since Duskpaw died." "Then maybe you'll both get over it," Darktail mewed with an understanding nod. "But remember, it's all well and good being kin to a cat, but in the wild, you have to take your kin where you find it." His somber tone convinced Hawkwing that he was speaking from personal experience. He felt a sharp prick of curiosity, wondering if this had anything to do with Darktail's friend who had starved to death in a harsh leaf bear. But Darktail said no more, and Hawkwing didn't feel that he could ask him about it. Hawkwing and the rest of the patrol approached the SkyClan camp as their second day of travel drew to a close. The sinking sun cast red light over the stretch of grass that separated the gorge from the two-leg place, and a few warriors of StarClan already glimmered in the sky. As the cats headed toward the gorge, Hawkwing picked up the scent of the border markers and halted abruptly, his pads prickling with apprehension.
"That's odd," he muttered.
"What's the matter?" Erebrook asked.
"The scent markings are stale," Hawkwing replied. "They haven't been renewed since dawn, at least."
His clanmates tasted the air, and after a moment, Sagenose nodded.
"You're right," he mewed. "Maybe they're just late with the evening patrol?"
"You really think so?" Hawkwing challenged him. "Or has there been more trouble? Let's get down there." The patrol picked up speed as they wound their way among the shrubs at the top of the gorge, and the shadows of the trees lay dark across their path. Hawkwing imagined they were ominous paws reaching out to grab him, then gave his pelt a shake, telling himself not to be so mouse-brained. Twilight lay thick in the gorge as Hawkwing and the others reached the head of the trail that led down into the camp. It was impossible to see exactly what was going on down below, except that there seemed to be a crowd of cats clustering around the entrance to Echo Song's den. Hawkwing took the lead as the patrol headed into the gorge. He was scarcely aware of the cliff dropping away below him as his paws skimmed over the rocks. His heart was pounding, and he could hardly catch his breath. "What happened?" he demanded, thrusting his way into the group of cats around Echo Song's den. "Is something wrong?" His sister Blossomheart turned to face him. In the dim light, he saw that she had an angry wound on one shoulder, with a clump of fur missing, as if some creature had bitten her.
"Those animals came back," she told Hawkwing. "Those raccoons. It was terrible. Leaf Star lost a life."
Hawkwing felt as though he had been clawed in his belly. Now he understood why the scent markings hadn't been renewed, and why his clanmates were waiting anxiously outside the medicine cat's den. And now that he had a moment to catch his breath, he could pick up the reek of the raccoons. Fading now, but still clear enough to reveal the creature's recent presence in the camp. The scent of blood was mingled with it, and as Hawkwing looked around, he saw that more of his clanmates bore the marks of the raccoon's teeth and claws. Most of them were already patched with cobweb and poultices of marigold. Both medicine cats must have been working tirelessly.
"There were more of them this time,"
Rabbitleap added from where he stood beside Blossomheart.
"What are we going to do?"
Before any cat could reply, Sharpclaw appeared at the mouth of the den. His green eyes glinted in the twilight as his gaze swept across the cluster of cats. "Leaf Star will be fine," he announced. "There's no need to worry about her, or to hang around here like a bunch of sick rabbits. Tiny Cloud," he angled his ears toward the white she-cat. "You're okay, aren't you? Round up some of the other uninjured warriors and take them to renew the scent markers." Tiny Cloud gave a brisk nod.
"Right, Sharpclaw."
She headed off, waving her tail to collect more of her clanmates around her. As the crowd thinned out, Sharpclaw spotted Hawkwing and the other questing cats who had hurried up behind him. "You're back!" he exclaimed, his tail curling up in surprise. "Come in here and report. No, not all of you, just Hawkwing and... yes, Darktail." Hawkwing's belly cramped. This was the moment he had been dreading.
"StarClan helped me. It wasn't our fault. No cat could have tracked Firestar's kin from that barn."
But Hawkwing knew that Sharpclaw wouldn't see it like that. He padded into the medicine cat's den, with Darktail hard on his paws. Inside he saw Leaf Star lying in a nest of moss. She was stretched out on one side with her belly exposed, and Echo Song was patting marigold pulp onto a scar on her chest between her forelegs. Hawkwing felt sick as he realized that must be the wound that had taken one of his clan leaders' lives. On the other side of the den, Frecklewish was patching Mist Feather's shoulder with a thick wad of cobweb. The Grey Tom flinched as her paws pressed the web down firmly to stop his wound from bleeding. Leaf Star raised her head as Hawkwing and Darktail entered the den. She looked exhausted, but her voice was steady as she meowed.
"So you're back. Are all of you safe?"
Hawkwing nodded.
"We're all fine."
And did you find Firestar's kin?
Hawkwing felt as if the one word was going to choke him. It was so hard to get it out. No.
No?
It was Sharpclaw who spoke, his voice edged with irritation. Why not? Glancing at Darktail, Hawkwing saw that the rogue Tom was standing at his shoulder, his head bent dejectedly as he stared at his paws. Obviously, there was no use expecting him to explain anything. We traveled for 2 days, Hawkwing began, speaking to Leafstar. It was easier to face his leader than the icy green stare of his father. Then we met a cat called Toad, a friend of Darktail's. He went on to describe how Toad had told them of a group of cats who had stayed for a while in the abandoned two-leg barn, and how Two-Legs and dogs had sprung out on the patrol when they tried to investigate. His voice shook and cold shivers ran through him as he related the story of Toad's death. In his mind, he could still hear the rogue cat's shrieks and the terrible snarling of the dogs. And when we tried to pick up a scent trail, he finished, we couldn't find anything. Not a single trace the clan cats had ever been there. Sharpclaw turned a hostile gaze on Darktail. You told us you knew how to find Firestar's kin. Darktail didn't look up. I was wrong, he mewed humbly. I'm sorry.
Sorry doesn't help us,
Mistfeather put in with a snort of contempt.
We're no nearer to finding out what StarClan's prophecy means.
And yet more darkness seems to be gathering with all these attacks, Sharpclaw added. We need to follow StarClan's advice as soon as we can.
As far as I can see,
Mistfeather growled, still glaring at Darktail.
We'd have been far better off if you and your rogue friend had never set paw in our camp.
Darktail cringed away from him. I tried my best, he began. And your best wasn't good enough, Sharpclaw told him curtly. Hawkwing, did this Toad tell you anything about where the clan cats might have gone? No, Hawkwing replied, beginning to feel annoyed. If he had, don't you think we would have tried to follow them? I don't know what you would have done, Sharpclaw retorted. I only know that you've gone out twice now, and we're still no nearer to fulfilling the prophecy. And we've lost Billy Storm, Mistfeather added. Hawkwing's belly churned, and he twitched the tip of his tail to and fro, doing his best to hold on to his temper. Like you would have done any better if you'd been there, he thought. But he had the sense not to say the words out loud. That's enough. Leafstar's voice was weary, and Hawkwing realized that Mistfeather's mention of Billy Storm was more than she could cope with just then. We need to think more deeply about this before we decide what to do next. And you need to rest. Echo Song spoke for the first time, her voice firm. Out, all of you. Freckleish, go and see if any cat still has untreated wounds. Otherwise, no cat sets paw in here until morning. As he left the den in obedience to the medicine cat's orders, Hawkwing felt as if his heart had sunk right down into his paws. We have enough trouble with these new creatures attacking our camp, he thought. How can StarClan expect us to follow their prophecy as well? And what's going to happen to us if we don't? Chapter 12. Hawkwing was roused from his sleep in the warrior's den by the sound of his father's voice yowling through the camp. Let all cats gather here beneath the rock pile for a clan meeting. Around Hawkwing, his clanmates were already leaping up and heading out of the cave. He staggered to his paws and shook scraps of bedding out of his pelt. Exhausted from the journey and the shock of learning about the fresh attack, he felt as if he had hardly rested at all, even though the sun was already well above the trees. Hawkwing was the last to leave the den, following Rileypaw and Stormheart down the trail to where Sharpclaw waited at the foot of the rock pile. There was no sign of Leafstar. Hawkwing guessed she was still resting, but he spotted the two rogues, Darktail and Rain, off to the side of the gathering crowd. Hawkwing joined the others and flopped down beside his sister, Cloudmist. What now? He muttered into her ear. Cloudmist shook her head. Just listen, she whispered back. SkyClan has suffered a second attack, Sharpclaw announced when all the cats had settled down. It's time to change our strategy. To begin with, patrols will be larger from now on. The raccoons may have been driven off for the time being, But if they think we are weak, or that there aren't many of us, they'll try to attack again for sure."
"That makes sense," Hawkwing murmured to his sister.
"It means every cat will have to patrol more often,"
she agreed, giving a quick lick to a scratch on her shoulder.
"But if it keeps the raccoons away, it'll be worth it."
Hawkwing noticed that some of his clanmates were casting mistrustful glances at Darktail and Rain, and he remembered the hostility of Sharpclaw and Mistfeather when the questing patrol had returned the night before with news of their failure. He thought too about his own hostility toward Darktail before they had left on the second quest. Every cat blamed me for feeling that way, but now they seem to agree that Darktail is a menace. But Hawkwing didn't feel the same way anymore. After the events of the quest, and especially after seeing Darktail's grief at the death of his friend Toad, he couldn't help but trust the White Tom. The same suspicion his other clanmates had begun to show appeared in the eyes of Waspwhisker as he rose to his paws with a sidelong glance at the two rogue cats.
"What if the threat is actually inside the camp?"
he asked. Every cat knew what he meant, and heads turned to stare at Darktail and Rain. Hawkwing heard one or two hisses, and some cat called out,
"Yes, what about that?"
Darktail remained calm in the face of Waspwhisker's accusation. He stood up and dipped his head politely toward Sharpclaw, as if he was asking permission to speak.
"I never meant to hurt the clan," he meowed, "but I admit I made some mistakes. Surely it's a measure of my honor that I want to do everything I can to make up for it. Surely the fact that I'm still around, trying my best to put things right, has to count for something."
Waspwhisker gave a dismissive flick of his tail.
"Rogue cats just don't belong with a clan. They will never understand clan cats' ways," he growled. "It's impossible."
"This is true," Sharpclaw agreed. "Clan cats have rules. Rogues have none. Clan cats are taught to care for each other. Rogue cats think only of their own survival. Darktail is not one of us, and he never will be."
"That's not fair,"
Hawkwing blurted out, leaping to his paws.
"Sharpclaw, you know that Darktail fought bravely for the clan when the raccoons attacked, and you should have seen the grief on his face when his friend Toad fell out of that tree. He has lost friends, just like we have. He doesn't need us throwing accusations at him."
Even while he was speaking, Hawkwing was torn about contradicting his father, especially for a cat he hadn't known for very long. He wasn't keen either on repeating his earlier argument with Sharpclaw in front of the whole clan. But he couldn't stifle the conviction that this time Sharpclaw was being unreasonable and harsh. Sharpclaw whipped his head around to glare at his son, a look of outrage in his green eyes.
"Why do you always have to argue with me?" he demanded.
"Darktail isn't your replacement brother, and he doesn't deserve more loyalty than kin." "Wait, I'm sure that's not what Hawkwing thinks,"
Cherrytail put in, but Sharpclaw ignored her, still fixing Hawkwing with a hard stare. Hawkwing's fur began to bristle. He felt like a scrap of twig being whirled around in a fierce gale of emotion. Grief and anger filled him at his father's words, along with confusion about why he would say such a thing. And every hair on his pelt burned with embarrassment as he realized that all his clanmates were looking at him. The conflicting pressures were too much to bear. Unable to stop himself, even though he knew that it made him seem as immature as a day-old kit, Hawkwing whipped around with a contemptuous flick of his tail and stormed away, back up the trail to his den. "I know it looks like I'm sulking, but I don't care what any cat thinks. If their father had been so unfair to them, they'd be as angry as I am now." Back in the warrior's den, Hawkwing flung himself down into his nest, letting his anger surge over him. But after a few moments, guilt and renewed embarrassment began to prick him like a thorn in his belly. "If my clanmates are patrolling, I want to be there with them," he realized. "I want to help them and keep them safe. Oh, fox dung. I know I'm behaving like a petulant kit." Taking a deep breath, Hawkwing rose to his paws, ready to head back out of the den. Just then a shadow fell over the den floor, and he saw that Pebblepaw was poking her head through the entrance. She was the last cat Hawkwing had expected to see. "This feels totally weird. I've hardly spoken to her since we went on the first quest together." "Are you okay?" Pebblepaw asked.
That must have been awful, having your father be harsh to you like that, in front of the whole clan, too.
For a moment, Hawkwing didn't know how to reply. He didn't want to seem weak or immature in front of Pebblepaw. At the same time, he couldn't help asking himself what it meant that she'd left a clan meeting just to come check on him. "I can't cope with this right now." "I'm fine," he snapped at last. "I don't need any cat's pity." Pebblepaw's eyes widened with hurt. Without another word, she withdrew from the den. Hawkwing followed her out and saw her stalking down the trail. That went well, he thought, annoyed with himself. Why can't I think before I speak? "Pebblepaw, wait!" he called out. The speckled white she-cat halted, then, after a heartbeat, turned her head to look up at him. "What?" "I'm sorry," Hawkwing meowed. Even though he knew he had been wrong, it was hard to force the words out. "I shouldn't have snapped at you." For a moment more, Pebblepaw hesitated. "It's okay," she responded at last, ducking her head. Then she bounded off to the bottom of the cliff where her brother, Parsley Paw, was waiting. Hawkwing watched her go, an unexpectedly warm feeling creeping through him from ears to tail tip. "I'm glad I said that. I don't want to fight with her anymore." Glancing farther out across the camp, Hawkwing could see cats still gathered around Sharpclaw at the foot of the rock pile. By the look of their bushed-up fur and twitching tails, they were still bickering. On the opposite side of the gorge, Darktail and Rain were heading up the cliff, leading a patrol with Bellapaw, Sandynose, and Mistfeather. Hawkwing bunched his muscles, preparing to bound down the trail and across the camp to catch up with the departing cats. Then he relaxed again with a sigh. "It's no good. I want to protect the camp, but if I go herring after Darktail, it'll only make things worse with Sharpclaw." He waited until the patrol was gone. Then he turned and walked back to his den. Hawkwing slipped through the undergrowth at the top of the gorge, following Bouncefire, Nettlesplash, Pebblepaw, and Sandynose, who had taken over Pebblepaw's training after Billystorm's death. As part of one of the new, larger patrols, Hawkwing kept all his senses alert for any sign that the raccoons were back on SkyClan territory. To his relief, everything seemed peaceful. The camp had become more peaceful, too. In the few days since the questing patrol had returned, Hawkwing's clanmates had stopped interrogating him about what had happened and why they hadn't managed to track down Firestar's kin. Leafstar, seeming recovered from the loss of her life, had spoken from the rock pile, proclaiming that SkyClan would wait until Echo Song received another vision from StarClan.
"Maybe," she had meowed, "the next prophecy will be clearer."
Hawkwing wasn't sure that his leader was right. StarClan's advice hasn't exactly been helpful so far, he mused. What if they don't actually want to help us? He couldn't imagine why the spirits of their warrior ancestors would turn against them. But our luck could not have been worse, and there has to be a reason for that. Bouncefire, leading the patrol, brought them out of the undergrowth and across the stretch of grass that separated SkyClan territory from the two-leg place. As they approached, Hawkwing saw that a new two-leg rock, made from freshly cut flat sticks, had replaced the one that was burned. Thicker foliage had covered most of the scorch marks on the tree. Renewed grief swept over Hawkwing. It's like my brother was never even here. He was careful not to look at Pebblepaw as they and their clanmates padded past the two-leg green place. He didn't want to be reminded of how he had saved her instead of Duskpaw, and also, he was surprised to realize he didn't want Pebblepaw to feel any trace of guilt about that terrible day. Reaching the farthest stretch of SkyClan territory, the patrol turned back.
"Nothing to report, thanks StarClan," Bouncefire commented.
But as they drew nearer to the wooded area above the gorge, Hawkwing spotted Darktail, alone, skirting the edge of the trees as if he was heading for the camp from the direction of the two-leg place. He's not with the patrol. So what is he doing? Hawkwing wondered. His pelt prickled with anxiety as he saw Darktail crouch down, his head jerking as if he was being sick. But after a moment the rogue Tom rose to his paws again and padded calmly away, making for the two-leg place again.
That's really weird.
Hey, Bounce Fire. I need to make dirt, Hawkwing called out. I'll catch up to you.
Bounce Fire waved his tail in acknowledgement as he and Nettle Splash, Sandy Nose, and Pebble Paw vanished into the undergrowth. Hawkwing bounded over to where Darktail had stopped. On the ground, he saw a few scraps of what looked and smelled like two-leg food. Hawkwing stood for several heartbeats, gazing down at the scraps. In one way, he wasn't surprised, assuming that rogue cats would eat anything. But what was really strange was that the food hadn't been eaten. Darktail hadn't been sick. He must have been carrying the food in his mouth and then dropped it. Maybe he didn't like the taste, Hawkwing thought, with a pang of pain as he remembered how much Duskpaw would have loved it. But then, why did he go back toward the two-leg place? Darktail was still in sight, a distant figure across the grass. Hawkwing decided to follow him, keeping his distance, and making sure that the breeze was blowing toward him and wouldn't carry his scent to the rogue Tom. Unaware he was being followed, Darktail headed onward until he slipped down a narrow thunderpath between the first dens of the two-leg place. Hawkwing felt his pelt prickle with apprehension. I don't want to go in there. Then he took a deep breath, bracing himself. If Darktail can do it, so can I. Hawkwing kept glancing around warily, alert for the appearance of two legs or monsters as he crept along in Darktail's paw steps. To his relief, not much time had passed before Darktail halted, then wriggled underneath a shiny barrier that blocked a gap between two lines of bushes. Giving Darktail enough time to get ahead, Hawkwing squeezed through after him and found himself standing at the edge of a stretch of smooth grass surrounded by bushes covered with strange, brilliantly colored flowers. At the far side of the grass, the walls of a two-legged den built of reddish rock loomed over him. His head spun at the mixture of unfamiliar sights and scents. There was no sign of Darktail, but Hawkwing could hear odd clanging noises coming from somewhere beyond the den. A moment later, the rogue Tom reappeared, whisking around the corner of the rock wall. Terrified of being spotted, Hawkwing dived under the nearest bush. He crouched there, panting, as Darktail passed within a tail length of him. I only hope these weird flowers are masking my scent. Then he tensed, digging his claws hard into the ground. Darktail had another piece of two-leg food gripped in his jaws. What does Darktail need two-leg food for? He wasn't eating it. No, he's taking it somewhere. But what other possible use could he have for the two-leg scraps? The White Tom was too intent on his peculiar mission to notice Hawkwing in his hiding place. He wriggled under the shiny barrier again and headed back the way he had come. Still tracking him, Hawkwing saw Darktail drop this new mouthful about halfway between the two-leg place and the spot where he had dropped the first scraps of food. Then he bounded off, making for the camp. Hawkwing followed more slowly, not sure what to make of any of this. He felt like he'd gotten to know Darktail better on their last quest, and he now believed that the rogue cat was good at heart. But what is this about? I could ask him. But Hawkwing felt a shiver of dread at the thought of admitting to his friend that he'd spied on him. He already thinks the whole clan doesn't trust him. I'm the one friend he has. Glancing back at the two-leg scraps, Hawkwing felt uneasy. I have to think about how to handle this, he thought. I'm not really sure he's doing anything wrong. As Hawkwing slowly made his way back to camp, his heart was heavy. I want to trust Darktail, he thought. I just hope we really can.